Well, for more on the Chinese economy and also the roundtable, I'm joined by Joseph Pelzman, Professor of Economics and International Affairs at George Washington University. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So for you, what were the key highlights from this roundtable meeting?
Well, the idea that we live in an interconnected world and protectionism isn't going to really pay. It's a non-starter. Basically, neither the United States or Europe or the People's Republic can afford to have a rift, even though there's a lot of, as they say, paka-paka, discussions about what you can do. A divorce isn't appropriate at this moment.
And certainly a lot of people, including Christine Lagarde, agrees with that stance. Let's also talk jobs. We know that Premier Li stressed the importance of promoting economic growth in order to spur job creation. Why is this so important, particularly as we look at China's future?
Well, China has a number of problems, one of which is job creation. The fact that there's a growing number of incredibly skilled people, and so you have to find jobs, you have to find high-tech jobs. So that becomes the demand side. They're outside in terms of sort of demanding something for their foreign direct investment, and so they're acquiring technology, they need production, they need somehow to create employment, same as the United States. In other words, the United States is at a max in terms of manufacturing employment, so the United States also needs to find jobs at the higher end of the production. So we both are in the same sort of quagmire, if you like. Robotics only does a little bit. Both the United States and the PRC are doing a lot of robotics, but you still require jobs at the high-tech level to keep everybody that's well-trained, both in the PRC and the United States, fully employed. The shortfall in the U.S. economy currently is lack of skilled workers. It's not that we don't have workers, we don't have enough skilled workers. In the context of the PRC, they have skilled workers, but they need to have employment for those skilled workers.
And we have seen that they have been creating, as we saw there, 13 million new jobs every year over the last 3 years. In terms of how the labor market is changing, though, as they shift to this higher value when it comes to the manufacturing chain, how do you think China should be then adapting to this?
Well, one, the driver used to be just trade of sort of just manufacturing simple things. It's no longer, it's now high tech. And it's more and more downstream rather than upstream. So China has to introduce more R&D. If they can't generate it themselves, they can buy it from overseas. We see that in the past 2 years, PRC is outside looking for new ideas, new patents, new technologies, environmental technologies, data technologies. And so they acquire it, they bring it back. And so that's been useful for them. There's a limit to how much you do it, because at some point you have to do it yourself. But they do acquire a lot of intellectual property rights, literally acquire, buy it, from scientists here, Europe, Israel, other places.
Now let's also look at global growth. We know that it is improving, but as Premier Li said, it is still fragile. And he suggested structural reforms rather than focusing on quantitative easing as a way to support growth. What are your thoughts on these strategies?
So it's a million-dollar question. Structural reforms would be nice. The trick is who gets to pick the winners and losers. Right? And so we all like the idea of structural reforms, but who wants to tell the loser that you have to re-educate yourself and restructure yourself? It's much more difficult. Quantitative easing is easier because basically you lower the cost of money. And so that's why everybody does it. Nobody really wants to do structural adjustment because you don't know where to go. Easy, cheap money is easy, right? So that's the reason for the preference. He's right, you do need structural adjustment. And the Americans know that in the sense of Trump realizing that there's a chunk of America that has to be structurally adjusted. But the answer to it, which is what we've been using before, which is trade adjustment assistance, hasn't proven to work.
Right.
In other words, we've been doing it since the time I came to Washington, but we don't know if the data will show that it worked or not, primarily because the data is secret.
Now, Joseph, I do want to get to something quickly. We know that there's always this issue of having global growth, but also making it inclusive. What should countries be doing then to try and make sure that people benefit and people don't feel left behind?
Well, trade is already making it inclusive anyway, in the sense that one of the things that is positive of the spillover of China going global is that it includes the countries around it as part of the value chain. And so that's how you make it inclusive. Now, you can do regional arrangements if you like, you can do bilateral arrangements, but corporations by themselves bring in the inclusiveness through the supply chain network. And so when China succeeded in trade for 20-odd years, it brought in its neighbors as part of the process. So it wasn't as if everything was done in the PRC, nothing was done in Vietnam, nothing was done in Cambodia. It was all brought in, including India. And so the idea is, that's the inclusiveness, is the idea that a single product in the United States has no mother and father. Right. In other words, there is no country of origin that you can identify a product with.
Certainly some lessons to be learned. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Joseph Pelzman, Professor of Economics and International Affairs at George Washington University.